Feeling to big rich ringing of the wood.
Sound of laughter.
Haunting, really.
That's a good sound. Hey, well, hello everyone. Hello everyone out there in the World Wide Web world. Mugana. Woo! What? It was a name given to me by Uncle Lewis Walker when I was living in Bunjalung. It means crazy cloud. Otherwise known as Thundercloud Repairian. That's my sovereign name. And then there's other people who know me as James, Arthur, Warren. I stand here on this land. Some people call it Australia. And some people didn't have that name before. On the 26th of January, 2022. Now, I don't know if my political correctness is getting the best of me or not, but I'm not here to cause any harm to anyone. And there will be people around the world that can take any of the words that are said here tonight out of context and bend them to suit their own needs. So as I stand on a place that has been inhabited for 60,000 plus years, on a day where a group of people celebrate the imposition of a Babylonian, Roman, Euro hegemonic structure on this land now called Australia, I'm going to start by acknowledging that we are on First Nations lands, of many First Nations lands, and begin tonight's Wednesday Words poetry from the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame with the Uluru Statement from the Heart in 2017. And as someone who's descendant from invaders of this here place that we now call Australia, I think it's only fitting that I don't stand here and preach and tell you what I think's right, because that would be just perpetuating the structural violence of the last 230 years. I'd like to stop and listen to what our First Nations people together spoke in 2017 in the Uluru Statement from the Heart. In May 2017, over 250 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander delegates from all points of the southern sky gathered in Matitjula in the shadow of Uluru and put their signatures on a historic statement. The Uluru Statement from the Heart, addressed to the Australian people, invited the nation to create a better future via the proposal of key reforms. The voice, the enshrining of a First Nations voice in the Australian Constitution. Makarrata, the coming together after a struggle to supervise a process of agreement making between governments and First Nations and truth-telling about our history. We gathered at the 2017 National Constitutional Convention, coming from all points of the southern sky, make this statement from the heart. Our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander tribes were the first sovereign nations of the Australian continent and its adjacent islands and possessed it under our laws and customs. This our ancestors did according to the reckoning of our culture from the creation, according to the common law, from time immemorial and according to science more than 60,000 years ago. This sovereignty is a spiritual notion. The ancestral tie between the land or Mother Nature and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who were born therefrom remain attached thereto and must one day return thither to be united with our ancestors. This link is the basis of the ownership of the soil, or better, of sovereignty. It has never been ceded or extinguished and coexists with the sovereignty of the Crown. How could it be otherwise that peoples possess the land for 60 millennia and this sacred link disappears from world history in merely the last 200 years? With substantive constitutional change and structural reform, we believe this ancient sovereignty can shine through as a fuller expression of Australia's nationhood. Proportionally, we are the most incarcerated people on the planet. We are not an innately criminal people. Our children are alienated from their families at unprecedented rates. This cannot be because we have no love for them. And our youth languish in detention in obscene numbers. They should be our hope for the future. The dimensions of our crisis tell plainly the structural nature of the problem. This is the torment of our powerlessness. We seek constitutional reforms to empower our people and take a rightful place in our own country. When we have power over our destiny, our children will flourish. They will walk in two worlds, and their culture will be a gift to their country. We call for the establishment of a First Nations voice enshrined in the Constitution. Makarrata is the culmination of our agenda, the coming together after a struggle. It captures our aspirations for a fair and truthful relationship with the people of Australia and a better future for our children based on justice and self-determination. We seek a Makarrata Commission to supervise a process of agreement making between government and First Nations and truth-telling about our history. We leave base camp and start our trek across this vast country. We invite you to walk with us in a movement of the Australian people for a better future. Yeah, and that's it. And with that, let's get on to some poetry. I'm going to start with a recent book, Out of the Blue, poems by David Hallet, a poet who I really respect from Nimbin. He's very great performer. He's won the Nimbin Performance Poetry Cup once, I think. He's also won like an Australian championship of reciting where he had to recite like 100 poems or something. He's just a really good poet. Anyway, this is Strange Days. Talking about public holidays. That's one of them today. Strange days. Strange, 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 these holidays in Oz. One for young men charging into guns on the fatal shore of an unknown country. One for a son of God nailed to a cross, one for Easter eggs. One for a baby born in a stable, one for boxing. One for invaders planting a flag on a land with no flags and calling it their own. One for the birthday of an old English woman that's not even her birthday. One for a meaningless 8-hour day, and one for New Year's Day and a hangover for what happened the night before. Strange, strange, strange. David Hallet. From his 2017 book, Out of the Blue. No, 2020 book actually. Out of the Blue by David Hallet. Tonight, I am going to read to you a selection of Mollie McNutt's poems. Mollie McNutt was a short-lived poet in that she didn't have a long life. It was pretty short. She lived to about 32. But in her short life, she was a teacher, and here at Armadale and at Hillgrove and in Urella, and she also won the Gould League Literary Award for a poem about Australian birds in 1912 and 1913. And both of those poems had to be able to be sung to music as well. So a lot of her poetry is very lyrical and verse-like. But yeah, Mollie McNutt. And this book, Australian Songbird, was published just last year in 2021 by Jane Lally from Armadale, who was researching Mollie McNutt and discovered all this stuff and then compiled this book about it. And you can get that here at the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame as well. The first one I'm going to start with tonight, because it's a rainy day. Hey, it's called a day of rain. Yeah. Now, Mollie McNutt, this was 1918, published in the school magazine, which went out to all the schools. They would publish all these teachers' writings and then send them out to all the schools, so then all the kids got to read the school magazine throughout New South Wales. A Day of Rain, the school magazine, volume 3, number 8, part 2, classes 4 and 5, the 2nd of September, 1918. That's when this poem was first published. A Day of Rain by Mollie McNutt. The gums are tossing and twisting under a leaden sky to see themselves in the gold-brown pools leaf-lined that beneath them lie. The wind that hath wanton the night goes sobbing and shuddering past the hills are blurred to a soft pearl grey by the rain veil over them cast. And now the rain is like shimmering mist or a fairy fountain's spray, as a shining rift in the darksome cloud gleams silver against the grey. A truant sunbeam or two peep through to be drowned in torrents of rain, as deeper and denser than e'er before dark gather the clouds again.
Oh, how interesting.
Yeah.
Did you write that on the New England?
Yes.
Well, it's got the feel.
Most of these were all written all up here. But it really, like the last line, the way dark gathered the clouds again, I had to practice that half a dozen times last night before I got it right. And it's available on YouTube now, so you can look that up on YouTube, that particular poem, A Day of Rain by Mollie McNutt, performed by me right here yesterday. Alright, and this video will also be up on YouTube, and if you just look up Wednesday Words Open Mic Poetry Night and the date, and it'll come up there on the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame YouTube channel as well. A Day of Rain, The Birds I Love. And this is the poem that she wrote in 1912 for the Gould League Prize for a Song on Australian Birdlife, capable of being sung to any well-known air. It won only a little over a decade after Australia became a nation, and still a few years before our baptism of fire as a country in World War I. So the poem reflects the sentiments of many Australians at the time. The Birds I Love was first published in the Sydney Mail in 1912 on the 9th of October. The Birds I Love. Oh, they talk of the songs of the birds over sea, of the mavis and merle of the old country, and the song of the skylark soaring free from the dew-wet lawns in the morning. But give me the magpie's gurgling call like the prison song of a waterfall when joyous drifts from gum trees tall their matin song in the dawning. They say that to hear through the moonlit night the nightingale is a dear delight, but give me the ranges bathed in light and the sound of the bellbirds singing. The chime of their notes like silver bells by fairies rung through our bushland dells, and the love song sweet that the blue wren tells through the scrub and the saplings ringing. Oh, I bear no grudge to the birds over sea, but the birds I love are the birds for me, the wagtail spry with his chirrup chee on my windowsill in the morning, the dear old jack with his brave ho-hee, the silver eye and his melody, and it's oh for a forest harmony, Australian birds in the dawning. Now, it reminds me of a Dreamtime story I heard once about, and I'm sitting here with a bunch of different colour birds. Now, when it was spoken, it was broken, but when we sing, our ears ring and we remember everything, and this is the healing, and these are the words, wise words of Lewis Walker that he wrote to me one day. When it was spoken, it was broken. And our First Nation languages were sung to each other in a way that they became memorable. But the Dreamtime story goes this, that once all the birds had the same colour. But the crow was smarter, and it started to use its language to manipulate the other birds. So the rainbow serpent saw that this was going down and gave all the birds different colours and all the animals, all the other birds, different songs. And when you listen to just one of them, you only get one colour, one part of the story. But to know the full dreaming, you have to sit around in a big circle with all of the birds, and it's all of the birds singing their song together that makes the chorus, the symphony, that is the full truth and the full dream. Yeah. And this is the next one I'll do is Birds of Australia. This was a 1913 Gould League winner. The glamour, the glory of song and of story enhances the charms of the birds over sea, the linty, the lavender rock, the gay-feathered peacock, the sweet singing bulbul, but dearer to me, the bushbirds are calling mid wild gullies falling and away through the ranges that slope to the sea. Their parrots low flying in splendour are vying, and gladly out gurgles the magpie's dear song. And sweet notes are ringing of ring coaches singing, and carol of butcher bird gladsome and strong, while lyre birds ne'er weary of mock songs and cheery. Oh, the wise kookaburra laughs loudly and long. Oh, birds of Australia, in spite of our failure, with soft words to woo you, our hearts you enthrall. But names that when spoken shall faintly betoken the blaze of your beauty, the lure of your call, shall child lips yet frame you. Right well shall they name you, for language of lovers is sweetest of all. All right, and now I'm going to call it quits there for now, for tonight, and I'm going to invite who is coming up tonight. I haven't even asked that question. There's Ashley. Of course, we've got Gladys Wilson here tonight. Welcome, Gladys. And Gladys won Australia Day award today. Yes. The Citizen of the Year in Guyra. So, and more deserving person I don't know. Yeah, it was wonderful. Like she's been, you know, a wonderful patron here at the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame and writing her own poetry. But not only that, talking to everybody in the street. Like when I say Citizen of the Year, she's out there talking to everybody she ever meets. Like seriously, and like that is why she's such a wonderful, you know, asset to Guyra and yeah, Australia everywhere. She is. There should be more Gladyses in the world. Yeah. And Ashley, you've got something to read. Doug, what about you tonight? Have you got something to deliver? Doug, Bronwyn looks like she's got some stuff she's ready to read too.
I'll read because it comes as a counterpoint to
excellent. Well,
what you've done and what you've said. I could only find two rulers, so I'm stuck between hypothesis and permutations. Implications got lost tonight. So I've got H and P doing their thing. Well, the hypothesis for Australia Day is that there is an Australia. The implications of that are that we need to show a little bit more courage in producing physically and mentally. And what is said here adds to that flow of production. Does it not?
It does.
Auditors?
It does.
And although I've got one of my three rulers missing, permutations, well, possibilities, probabilities, they'll come from that birth of thought. I listened on LibriVox last week to something I'd read a couple of times, but it hadn't really hit me. But I think all people who read it with depth are stunned by Herman Melville's Benito Mussolini. Benito Sereno. Although perhaps there is some connection to fascism in this short novella. It is most apt to tell auditors to read this novella, Benito Sereno, tonight, standing here for Australia Day, on Australia Day, because one could look upon our continent as a vast galleon lost at sea, just like the main characters, Bachelor's Joy and the Saint Sebastian, the main characters of this novella. And it's also relevant in that Melville prowled the Pacific. He worked with Australian ocean-going people, and he left a masterpiece to the world in Benito Sereno. Kafka, eat your heart out. Well, I knew Billy Budd when I was younger, and I'd missed Sereno. So here's a little note that was sent to me by our mate, John Anono. And it's short and sweet, but the theme is Australia Day. Diary entry, John Anono. Baz of the Baz at Australia Day ceremonies today. He thanked the organisers because not a single banner of bunting appeared in green and gold, so there was no genuflection to those defeated Irish Republican swats. He said to passers-by and to organisers, the youth of Australia are blazoned true in red, white and blue. He exhorted the new councillors to remain true to our Anglo realm colours and traditions. I looked around too and I couldn't see a single blob of green and gold. He exhorted us to remain true. I put this into my diary, John Anono goes on to say, to God, Queen and country. And as usual, Baz was quite impassioned. Mrs. Perkins was going by and overhearing the Baz, she chirruped in with, well, it's good enough for our Olympians to go out there in green and gold, Baz. Baz remained silent. And on our walk home, Baz, you know, he eyed somnolently towards me. knowing I would have words of import. The French originally developed the red, white and blue thing as part of the revolutionary tri. What tree? No tricolour contained red, white and blue. They used to raise it aloft on their little perky breasts as the sharp guillotine came down and docked off the king's head and the queen's head. The frogs, piped up Baz. And that is all I, John and Ono, have to report this Australia Day from the philosophical wellsprings of ever ebullient Baz of the Baz.
Yeah.
And I set out in the rain and I thought about the marvellous short stories this man wrote 100 years before Franz Kafka, and arguably no one in English has yet said what he said in Billy Budd and Benito Cereno. All about slaves, black men and white men, different languages clashing, Spanish, English, all the mulatto creeds and tones of darkest Africa. And they swing around Cape Horn and are blown out into a wild sea of fantasy, of truth and lies, of lies and truth. Do go on that journey with Mr. Melville. So I sat in the car in the rain, and I thought that when people wrote from here to Scotland in the 19th century, the Scots would always write back, or so people of 104 years old would tell me in the 1870s, and say, oh, that country's a feast or a famine. A feast or a famine. And as we've had 3 or 4 years of terrifying drought, and then nearly went up in a conflagration of heavenly flame, to have a year of rain is consoling. It's got a certain swing. Shall we sing? No, seriously. The poet talks that way upon the mountaintop of things, gives us wings, of course. We put brackets around, of course. But sometimes stills us up into the miry of things. You know, the miry of things patched outside of any dawn or hoped for one. We are left there in the stoic sun, or black moon that comes down into the pocket that's open at its bow. It's got a certain swing. Those last stretch images, the galleon's horizon sealed with spectral calm, and the space beams luminescent, hinting at where space may be, trolling in, overing the lintel, overing. It's got a memorableness to lines frothing, quick slicks of jocund bubble round the dark rock shards. And we're all there. I got that, we're all there, having those self-same thoughts, the same in the poem's shamanistic swing. Stepping carefully on the rocks above the sand. Do read Benito Cereno. Although Mussolini's got something to do with it somewhere. It's an amazing piece of writing. I was talking to the professor this morning who said it's, in his view, it's absolutely stunning, that Benito Cereno. It rocked me. I'm not the same person. I'm not. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that bugger wrote that in 1850.
1850.
Well, I've written something really shit, actually.
Your poem last week about the watershed at Linsmore was
No, it's
great.
purposely shit.
Shit.
No, seriously, yeah. When I wrote it, I was like, yeah, okay, this is going to be a bad one. I'm going to write something really crap. Do not listen to this poetry. It's pure garbage. It's worse than the smell of rotting cabbage. Right of the left of the right in a diagonal process where I can't decide. Imagine a ladder with one step after the other. There's a rational logic way to climb. Now imagine a multi-dimensional spider web infinitely connected pathways entwine in a multi-dimensional interconnected field with the flexibility of an ecosystem that won't yield. There is something for everyone at the place in an infinitely impossible, ever-expanding space. This is the dawn of the evolution of creation. Do anything that you want with this information. Go bowling, cajoling, keep on rolling. If you're a pole dancer, keep on poling.
You'll be arrested.
Stay on the straight and narrow and never change. Or don't conform and be weird and strange. Walk about with your eyes open but still asleep. Little Bo Peep, left alone her lost sheep, never knew where to find them, but sheep tails are docked, so not one sheep wagged its tail in the entire flock. As an angry shepherd girl took vengeance with a knife and ended every single returning lamb's life, ate roast lamb, mashed potato and chops, with Little Miss Muffet who brought some ice cream from the shops. And the pole dancer just kept on sliding up and down the pole. The spider used a web, but I used a ladder to get out of the hole. Plus a kilo of salt and a little bit of water, and then return home like we ordered. And if you think this poem is a crock of shit, then share it, like it, and tell everyone about it.
Reminded me of Les Murray's poem about the water tank. I don't know why, but the web. But anyway.
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, I get it. I've read that again. That's a wonderful.
Do you want to read it?
Read
it to the masses.
Yeah.
Sorry for taking up your screen. No one will.
Definitely. It's a wonderful poem. Now, in the meantime, this week, I've got to thank Mark. Now, Mark's one of our other stalwarts here, but he's not here tonight because he's down at Urella, possibly.
Such a good poem.
Yeah, Mark gave me some mung beans, and I made a mung bean dal. Oh, it was so good. My mung bean dal is so delicious. My mung bean dal is also nutritious with onion, garlic, turmeric and ginger. Mung beans, cumin and get some in ya. Coriander, mustard, chilli and curry, coconut milk, and you better hurry. My mung bean dal will pass the test. My mung bean dal is one of the best. And that's available from the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame when I get some more mung beans. P.S. My mung bean dal is good for your heart, and my mung bean dal made me fart. But there is other good food here too. But Les Murray's Rainwater Tanks, and
it's a magic poem. Depart. Oh, sorry. Depart.
So yeah, let's set the scene. Imagine a corrugated iron rainwater tank. Empty rings, when tapped, give tongue. Rings that are tense with water talk. As he sounds them rung by rung, Joe Mitchell's reddened knuckles walk. The cattle dog's head sinks down a notch, and another notch beside the tank. And Mitchell's boy with an old jack plank lifts moustaches from a plank. From the puddle that the tank has dripped, hens peck glimmerings and up tilt their heads to shake the quickness down. Petunias live on what gets spilt. The tank stand spider adds a spittle thread to her portrait of her soul. Pencil grey and stacked like shillings out of a banker's paper roll stands the tank. Roof-water drinker, the downpipe stares drought into it. Briefly, the kitchen tap turns on, then off, but the tank says debit. debit.
Great poem.
It is. And with that, Bronwyn, would you like to?
Tell us about the meaning of life.
No pressure, mate. We don't do pressure here.
Thank you.
And Doug, have you got something for us to
Oh, I will go.
Excellent. And Steve, yes?
Yeah, sure.
That's the meaning, isn't it?
It
Pressure.
is. And
Got into
Gladys?
the water tank.
Gladys, will you do your Australia one tonight for us?
I didn't bring it.
You've got it somewhere, you've got it.
Remember?
Oh, have you?
Yes.
Oh, right. Okay.
He's got
Well,
it in
I
that poster.
I got the spirit of the bush tonight too.
Did you? It's only H2O though.
Yeah,
Don't we have something stronger?
I think so.
Ready when you are, Bronwyn.
Okay, look, I went to a one-man
Oh, good
school.
James.
I went to a one-man school, Baker's Creek.
Did you?
Yes, out from the pine forest.
For how long?
Oh, most of my, first years at school, primary. And my sisters rode horses there, but I just missed out on that. But the teacher, Mr. McRae, gave us some memorable poems. And this is one of them. Now, I know that you would have heard it 1,000 times. And I don't care if you feel, oh, what the heck. What I'm going to ask you to do is to listen to it as though it's the first time you've ever heard it, with fresh beginner's mind. It's called beginner's mind. And this is what it is. Clancy of the Overflow. I'm sorry I have to do it on this Australia Day.
Oh no, apologies needed.
Oh, good. Banjo Pass.
I've been thinking a lot about it lately, strangely.
Well, my son quite often sends me a text saying, Bronnies of the Overflow, how are you going?
Gone to Queensland Road.
That's right.
Where
Gone to Guyra Hall of Poets dreaming.
Just see if you can hear it as if for the first time. And if you want, you could even close your eyes.
Wow.
Yeah. I had written him a letter which I had, for want of better knowledge, sent to where I met him down the Lachlan years ago. He was shearing when I knew him, so I sent the letter to him, just on spec, addressed as follows, Clancy of the Overflow. And an answer came directed in a writing unexpected, and I think the same was written with a thumbnail dipped in tar. 'Twas his shearing mate who wrote it, and, verbatim, I will quote it. Clancy's gone to Queensland droving, and we don't know where he are. In my wild erratic fancy, visions come to me of Clancy gone a-droving down the Cooper, where the western drovers go. As the stock are slowly stringing, Clancy rides behind them singing. For the drover's life has pleasures that the townsfolk never know. And the bush has friends to meet him, and their kindly voices greet him. In the murmur of the breezes and the river on its bars. And he sees the vision splendid of the sunlit plains extended, and at night the wondrous glory of the everlasting stars. I am sitting in my dingy little office where a stingy ray of sunlight struggles feebly down between the houses tall, and the fetid air and gritty of the dusty, dirty city, through the open window floating, spreads its boundless over all.
Oh, excellent. Excellent.
Love it.
And in place of lowing cattle, I can hear the fiendish rattle of the tramways and the buses making hurry down the street, and the language uninviting of the gutter children fighting comes fitfully and faintly through the ceaseless tramp of feet. And the hurrying people daunt me, and their pallid faces haunt me as they shoulder one another in their rush and nervous haste, with their eager eyes and greedy, and their stunted forms and weedy, for townsfolk have no time to grow, they have no time to waste. And I somehow rather fancy that I'd like to change with Clancy, like to take a turn at droving where the seasons come and go. While he faced the round eternal of the cash book and the journal, but I doubt he'd suit the office, Clancy of the overflow.
Oh, excellent.
It's in all of your synapses. I know you could probably almost have said it off by heart, but don't we love it? I love it. And the other thing I want to acknowledge on this Australia Day, I will never forget the moment I first heard Guyra sing. That tenor voice, the purity of his voice, that blind man. His parents were so proud of him. At first, when he was growing up, they thought, we've had a blind baby. And he's going to be, behind everyone else for the rest of his life and kind of almost an embarrassment. But Guyra, he sings about, I've been to New York, I've been to LA, I've been to London, and what a beautiful being, what a wonderful... I'm only just sending my love and my gratitude out to Guyra because I've played his CD to death. I've got another poem, but it's not Australian, and I don't think I'll read it. It's a beauty though, but maybe next time.
You can.
No, off you go.
Yeah, do it.
Australia is a mixed smorgasbord.
Multicultural country.
Oh,
It is, yeah.
right.
A lot of German stuff in this region that gets no acknowledgement.
Okay, well this is page 44. And of course it's Rumi, the Persian poet saint. And it's called The Sheik.
Not Scrubby Creek.
What a good idea. Thank you, Doug. The Sheik who played with children. A certain young man was asking around, I need to find a wise person. I have a problem. A bystander said, there's no one with intelligence in our town except that man over there playing with the children, the one riding the stick horse. He has keen, fiery insight and vast dignities, like the night sky, but he conceals it in the madness of child's play. The young seeker approached the children. Dear Father, you who have become as a child, tell me a secret. And the sheik says, go away, this is not a day for secrets. But please, ride your horse this way, just for a minute. The sheik play galloped over. Speak quickly, I can't hold this one still for long. Whoops, don't let him kick you. This is a wild one. The young man felt he couldn't ask his serious question in this crazy atmosphere, so he joked, I need to get married. Is there someone suitable on the street? There are 3 kinds of women in the world. 2 are griefs, and 1 is a treasure to the soul. The first, when you marry her, is all yours. The second is half yours, and the third is not yours at all. Now get out of here before this horse kicks you in the head. Easy now. The sheik rode off among the children. The young man shouted, "Tell me more about the kinds of women." The sheik on his cane horse came closer. The virgin of your first love is all yours. She will make you feel happy and free. A childless widow is the second. She'll be half yours. The third, who is nothing to you, is a married woman with a child. By her first husband she had a child, and all her love goes into that child. She will have no connection with you now. Watch out, back away, I'm going to turn this rascal around. He gave a loud whoop and rode back, calling the children around him. One more question, Master. The sheik circled. What is it? Quickly. That rider over there needs me. I think I'm in love. What is this playing that you do? Why do you hide your intelligence so? The people here want to put me in charge. They want me to be judge, magistrate, and interpreter of all the texts. The knowing that I have doesn't want that. It wants to enjoy itself. I am a plantation of sugarcane, and at the same time I'm eating the sweetness. Knowledge that is acquired is not like this. Those who have it worry if audiences like it or not. It's a bait for popularity. Disputation knowing wants customers. It has no soul. Robust and energetic before a responsive crowd, it slumps when no one is there. The only real customer is God. Chew quietly your sweet sugarcane God love and stay playfully childish. Your face will turn rosy with illumination like the red bud flowers. Let the lover be disgraceful, crazy, absent-minded. Someone sober will worry about things going badly. Let the lover be. All day and night music, a quiet, bright reed song. If it fades, we fade.
Excellent.
Appreciate it.
Okay. I don't know, I think I need to get on my crazy horse and go riding around.
Bring out fermented potato juice.
Yeah, you've got to enjoy life. Yeah, and that Clancy of the Overflow, it has so much meaning for me. I came here because of Banjo Patterson. I'd been down at the Banjo Patterson Poetry Festival in Orange, which is in February next month, coming month. And here I am. I've opened the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame, and that whole idea of this poet who used to be out on the ranges, writing about Clancy and then living up in Winton in Queensland and travelling around to all these bush horse races, because it's the only way you could have read about them was actually going out there and visiting all of those places. But then later on in his life, when he wrote Clancy of the Overflow, being stuck in a dirty little office with a dingy ray of sunlight and and the kids outside having a blue. And sometimes it's like, what have I got myself into here? And I spend 168 hours a week minus eat, meditation, yoga and sleep in this building here, working away to celebrate all these poets. And I was like, I feel a bit like that banjo when he wrote about Clancy. Yeah. But anyway, no, I get out every day and I have a bit of a run and I look at the sky and stuff, so I don't just lock myself in this like great big orifice here. The orifice of Guyra. So yeah, thanks very much for both of those. Particularly Rumi. Yeah, really I appreciate that. And Rumi's got such lovely wisdom and lessons in it, isn't it? Yeah.
Thanks, James, of the Overflow.
I've got love overflowing out of my heart. This was written 6 days ago. It was when it was really windy last week. It got kind of cold and windy up here. And this is about this building on a really windy night. Windy night, and the grand old theatre starts to speak. As the corrugated roof iron begins to rattle and creak, shaking and quaking in the dark, it's not quite. Punctuated thumps interject in the windy night. Outside trees bend, flex and hang on to their leaves. The winds whip, whirl and gust as the earth breathes. Clouds in the dark swoop across the sky as the whistle of winds is like a freight train passing by. Short and sweet. That's what it was like.
Hey, one more line to that poem.
Yeah.
I just had to scoff down to my dial when the wind was coming.
Yeah, well, on that note, I'm going to invite Doug on up.
Bloody wind coming.
Yeah. And I'll just blow on out of it. I have a blow in at Guyra anyway, like most of us, except for Gladys. Gladys is the only one who's not a blow in here. Yeah. You've been here all your life.
Yes, I've been born here.
Bronwyn's not a blow-in if she went to a one-person school, not that far away as the crow
Well,
flies.
true. Yeah.
Yes, I'm almost a regular. Another 20 or 30 years, I'll be called a regular.
Welcome, Doug.
Hey, thank you. This makes me nervous. I feel like a preacher. Anyway, I've got to be a preacher. Forgive me. Now I've got to throw something at you. It's very interesting listening to the previous poems, and just help me, will you? I have mental blank spots, but there was movement at the station. That's the word. What's that poem called?
Man from Snowy River.
Yeah, but was that a banjo?
Yes,
it was.
You can read
Okay.
it
I know Clancy's in it. Anyway, what I want to tell you was when I'm living in the States in Montana for a few years, I got pally with a guy. We used to have lunch occasionally together, and his name was Clancy. And I said, "You're a bit of a legend in our country, Clancy's." And he used to sleep in his truck in Montana, which is bloody cold, and he'd have to wake up in the middle of the night, turn the motor on to warm himself up. He was a cowboy. But I one day copied the poem for him and gave it to him, and it really touched his heart. Clancy from Montana getting that under his belt. He thanked me, It's a fantastic poem as well, of course. All right. Look, I had an emotional day. I spoke to my granddaughter today, first time for a couple of years really. It spoke from the heart. And I'm thinking of Australia Day, and I'm thinking of the kids. My granddaughter Mollie's going to high school on Monday. She's 12 years old. And she's a citizen of this country, but she's lived. My son had a job in Alaska, and she's over there doing, what do they call it? Co-education. She has American in the morning and Russian in the afternoon, and she can speak good Russian. So I'm thinking of kids, they're touched with all sorts of stuff. Anyway, this book about new humans, which I don't want to preach about, is about kids and how kids, highly evolved kids, are being thrust in amongst us in these delicate times. No, I don't know whether to call them Australians or not. I think they're kind of international or intergalactic, if I could even be so bold. I think, yeah, anyway, it's so amazing to read some of this stuff. And we've touched on it tonight about the arrogance of the white man, or the arrogance of anyone. And this last chapter, it takes a bit of reading because it's tough. But I'll just read you one line here, which touched me the other day, about the arrogance maybe of my knowledge or my ancestors' knowledge, and thinking that we know it all. Anyway, this line is a quote of Albert Einstein, who's been around a bit, I think. And he says in this quote, Albert, he says, "Whoever sets himself up as judge in the field of truth and knowledge is shipwrecked by the laughter of the gods." That includes all my bloody teachers, my relatives, a whole lot of them that have told me the absolutes. Anyway, I've got to forgive and love all of them, but God, that talks to me. All right, now I've got a bit of a spiel here. It's a little bit ridiculous, this poem, but it's the best I could do. I've done a bit of serious poetry, but this is kind of serious, and yet it has a message. You can take it or leave it. Yeah, well, I've got my specs here, okay. I hope I can read it sensible. The title of this poem is Counterintuitive. Can I share a wee rhyme about a moment in time as I indulged in relief of the bladder?
Have a piss.
I've got to start. I don't want to be sued. I don't want to be lewd, crude, or decidedly rude. But my tale of a gale, don't be proud, don't be shy, happened in bathroom, so very close by. The trough in the tin shed next door, you may know, is frequently used. The urine will flow. The murals adorn this simple construction. The odour is slight from the bodily function. I had to change the words of it. I stood there in bliss, enjoying relief, when my focus was drawn to water down under. The splash on my boots seemed no matter. Something else was enjoying this splatter. A small frog black was floating on back, imbibing itself in such urine. Don't fuss, he suggested, my strength may be tested. My medicine needs no dilution. This flow, so golden, they say, will give life. Such healing you cannot comprehend. In the trough over yonder, 3 frogs now drool in a pool of glorious wonder. This will test out your notion of what's in the ocean. This stuff is just waste, they assert. The Ganges and Gandhi might open your mind. The virus has challenged my concept of real. I question the old status quo as I feel. Amen.
That's a very Australia Day AM. B-A-N-N.
Oh, wow.
What's that?
Thank you, Doug. Yeah.
The one's one that is making for it.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to be said about urine therapy and drinking your own urine. Yeah. Short of breath. Muscles ache. Stiff legs. Sore limbs. Must be coming down with a case of... I just did some exercise.
That's very zen.
Short of breath, muscles ache, stiff legs, sore limbs. Yeah, it must be coming down in the case of I just did some exercise. Yeah. And with that note, Gladys Wilson, please come on up. Guyra's Citizen of the Year.
You'll do.
I've got that one again. I've got two. Now I'm hoping I can read this because I'm as blind as a bat. I'll just stand over in the corner here somewhere. Okay. Well, this is one I done this morning at the flag raising down at the Shire, and it's just called Australia. We live in this wonderful country that's divided by land and sea, where our Anzacs fought for freedom to keep us all safe and free. With this ever-growing nation of ours, there's so much to share. Let's all stand together as proud Australians to show we really care. The rugged landscape of the bushland, peacefully flowing rivers and streams, our beautiful scenic view of the historic Blue Mountains is the envy of one's dreams. Still, all of nature's creations, nothing can compare to the everlasting eucalyptus and the sweet-smelling scent of wattle that drifts in the evening air. Even with good intentions, many still like to brag about our precious icon, the good old Aussie flag. We should all be thankful in this life, as there's peace forevermore, without villains and bushrangers of long ago that have now vanished from our shore. The kangaroo and emu, the koala, our cockatoo, and the red glow of the setting sun that hangs over Uluru. So please raise our hands to salute our country that's ever so rich and rare. Now come on, mate, let's celebrate Advance Australia Fair.
Woo!
Thank you, Gladys.
Now this is the one I wrote, this is about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and the spirit of the bush, because I have a wonderful sense with campfires. I get, love the smell of smoke from the campfires and all this lovely fresh air. So this is the spirit of the bush. Nothing can compare to the beauty of this wide open space here in the great Australian bushland that could never be replaced. In nature's paradise, though, we seem to have it all. Our precious flora and fauna, plus the magpie's early morning call. As the evening shadows creeps across and smoke from the campfire fills the air, out in this wonderful part of the world without worry or a care. Gum trees on the hillside now awaken as another day dawns anew, while a carpet of wild flowers and ferns all sparkle in the morning dew. But there is nothing better than being in this bushland that we love, with the moon sailing overhead and each star shining brightly from above. Here in all this wilderness, where we can surely dream that only one famous artist, Guyra, could paint this magnificent scene. Many can still remember good times out in the beaten track, carrying their swags here in the great outback. But these days are now finally gone, but the ghost of Bushmen from our past, their spirits will live on. Now looking at our rugged landscape, far as the eye can see, but the spirit of the bush will always be home to me. That's me done. Oh dear. Okay.
You're awesome.
Interesting.
Thank you.
Steve, how are you going?
I'm doing well,
We've got
James. How are you doing?
Steve Wordsmith here tonight. Well, the phoenix is about to fly, so his feathers got to get burned. A phoenix and a box of matches met. No, come on up, because this could be either of us.
Hey, surely
We could be one or the other. A phoenix and a box of matches met in a pyre.
Yeah,
A pyre, and the box of matches said, I'm going to start a fire. The phoenix was happy because it was time he earned his ability to fly because his feathers needed to be burned.
What a fabulous poem. Thank
There
you.
you go. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, James. It's always good to be here at the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame. And what a night of entertainment. You know, Ashley doing some wonderful stuff, thank you. Gladys doing hers. This lovely lady down here, I've only just met, Bronwyn, lovely stuff. And Doug, always great. And always James, thank you very much. It's really, really fabulous to be here. See, I'm touched a little bit by this Australia Day situation. You know, we have many different viewpoints, and it is a time for change. I do believe in a time of change. I wear a rainbow colours and all that because I think we have to move forward into the future. You know, I love this country. I've been around this country. I've travelled throughout it. I've represented it at world level, and I think it's the most fabulous country on this planet. But we're going forward. We're moving into a new era, a total new era. You know, I say I'm fifth dimensional or getting there. And I believe, you know, we are in the process of moving in time. We're moving from a third dimensional situation to a fifth dimension. And a fifth dimension is in a totally different aspect. In the past, the third dimension has been bound by fear, hurt, and difficulties. We have been taught to be better, to get more, to greed, and all these things. But we're going into the fifth dimension, which is all about love. It's about compassion. It's about standing together as a community and moving forward. And that's where I believe. So if we have beliefs, that's my belief. And it's my opinion. And I know opinions are like bomb holes. Everyone's got one. So that's my opinion. I love this country because I've been in a lot of situations with it. I love the people of this country. I love the outback of this country. I've travelled the whole around. See, I haven't been around the world, but I've been around the block. I don't know it all, but I know a bloody lot. I don't have a house or a place of abode. I spend most of my time on the south side of the road. I'm an outback poet just moving around with my heart in the bush and my feet on the ground. I've travelled this land from the top to the bottom. I've been to the Murray, I've seen the cod rotten. I've travelled from east and I've travelled from west. I've travelled with zeal and I've travelled with zest. This is the best country in this place. I love the whole place, but I haven't been around the world. If I'd had the opportunity, because of situations that happened last year or the year before, I was booked to do a world round tour, and that would have been fabulous because I could have taken my Australianism and my slanguage, the Aussie slanguage, to the countries of this world, you know, because, you know, we are known, the Australians, as being larrikins. And I'm a bit of a larrikin, there's no doubt about it. As poetry, I've got a fair bit of experience in many ways, but the poetry and meeting James back 5 years ago, 6 years ago, was a time when things were changing, and it is changing. And just to see people moving forward in this way is just an encouragement to poets of the older poets. When I was back in the Expo time in 1988, and I was representing the communities of this country, I got to speak to lots of people and spread the word that this is the most fabulous country, and it's a country of freedom. But I think things are changing a little bit. And some of these freedoms that we stand for, which makes this country the country that we know. The poets of this country have to be a clarion call to the people to say, when you open up your eyes to realise the real eyes and realise the real lies, because there's plenty of real lies in this country and there's plenty of things that's happening in this world at the moment. We'll go back to change. I want to tell a story because we've touched on a number of the Indigenous people's plights and things of this in this time, but I want to tell a story, and I tell it regularly, but it's a story of a man, and it tells it's got a lot of these little slang words in it, like loo. That was in a seedy Sydney suburb at the turn of the century. It's got bundi, and the chucking stick and the way that the Indigenous used to do things. I met him first near Warren, working on a starved out farm. He was skeletor and sallow, lean of shank and long of arm, wide lips and flared out nostrils that bespoke his native blood. Battler, scratching hard existence in this land of drought and flood. But he won a tight survival chasing rabbits day and night. He had no gun nor ammunition. Used to knock 'em out in flight with a waddy for a weapon. Junk or rock was just the same. And he'd grab that groggy bunny and he'd say, that was deadly aim. Seldom off his target gave those spielers a little rest in them knock-em-sock-em alleys in the showground out the west. The day that I enlisted, he was standing next to me, and I heard him tell the captain that his name was Darky Lee. Or often quiet and moody, lonely in a crowd, no doubt, or perhaps the dip of colour made him feel the odd man out. But he was a willing soldier, and a dinkum cobber too, like the night the MPs caught us at that swai game in the loo. Yeah, he nailed that provost sergeant cold as any side of meat, with a well-aimed whiskey bottle at the range of 20 feet. Mighty quick we were escaping, and I heard our mate exclaim as we scarpered through the alleys, fellas, that was deadly aim. Then our mob embarked for service to a land across the sea, where the final call awaited for this bloke called Darky Lee. Yes, it was at the bluster, Darky Lee's coming again, James. It was at we won't finish it off. I'll go on to something. No, Darky Lee comes in every now and then because I tell that story, and I truly believe there's an essence of this man. And it tells a story of an Indigenous hero that died in the 30s for the people and the freedom of this country. And I take my hat off to him, to Darky Lee, and to the many people that were not recognised and that stand for freedom in this country. I love that poem that Gladys just did, and it's called The Spirit of the Bush.
The Spirit of the Bush, yeah. I love campfires and, you know, the smell of fresh air and all the shadows creeping across the... Yeah, so that's it. Yeah.
Now, I wrote Spirit of Australia.
Oh, good.
There's magic in the mountains with the Aussie sounds around us as we travel through the universe. And we thrive here in nature as Mother Earth supplies. With the waters from the mountain springs and the sounds of birds as they sing, and the gentle breeze just whispering a lovely lullaby. When the fire burns around us and the forests are ablaze, and the smoke is so thick and you can't see through the haze, and the anguish of the hurt and loss of the affected in its path, through many trials and hardships throughout this southern land, as the devastation spreads and the virus comes to bear. There is a time of gathering while the crew are slowly mustering and the instruments are turned up to make that special vibe. Yes, the magnetism is magic, not bound by the illusion and the outside world's confusion as we open up our eyes. Yes, we open up our real eyes and we realise to the truth that has been found. So we live here in abundance with the Aussie sounds around us, with the orchestra of nature, and we find our place in the symphony, tried by virus, fire, floods and hardships, and the spirit of this southern land really comes alive. Now, you're not allowed to do that, iPad. I'm not very good with these technical things, you know, but I think, yeah, well, see, I celebrate some of the poets of the past. We had a poet called Breaker Morant. He was the first man shot by Australian forces in the Boer War, and I got asked many years ago to do a reenactment of the Breaker Morant trial, and the lawyer called Thomas, J.F. Thomas, was the person that I was asked to perform as. I went into the mountains in the Tenterfield to have a look at his own old homestead, and the spirit took me. The house now was beaten and broken. There was bullet holes in the flag. The words that he'd thought of and were spoken lost by the tears of the sad. He came home to a town that he'd left from, hurt, disgusted and mad, torn apart by wrong-made decisions that crucified one of his lads. The Aussie troops they had mustered from a nation newly born, from the outback stations where 1 million sheep were shorn, came the men who rode the fences. They were young and hard as nails, with a pioneer spirit and a will that seldom fails. They were brought up on the stock horse, that sturdy working steed that very seldom failed you when it came the time for speed. They were told of the great adventure on those far-off foreign shores, so they rolled up their swags and ventured to fight in that thankless war. One of these blokes was the Breaker. He'd spent his days on the track. With his mates, he'd humped his balooey. Yes, he'd wandered the great outback. Wrongly charged and later convicted, a young Thomas was given the task of representing the spirited Breaker for crimes that he'd never been part. Like Christ, he'd been made the scapegoat to cover up the wrongs of the proud. He was there seeking a life of adventure, not intending to carry a shroud. The pleas of Thomas were fruitless to convince that the verdict was wrong. So they lined him up and they shot him, the inspiration for many a song. Breaker Morant was a hero. Thomas was one as well. And I feel the culprits that disgraced them have located themselves in hell. He came home to a small country town. He founded the Tenterfield Star. This town of many memories will always carry a scar. Thomas spent the rest of his days there with thoughts of African crags, where Australian soldiers aimed their rifles and put bullet holes in our flag. It's the sort that you remember, the ones that people might hate when they shoot one of your cobbers and you're supposed to be their mate. The life of a poet. It's not always there are many different ways that we take poetry on and we do things, and where we come from to build the character of the poet, because many of us have gone through many things in this life and such, but as I say, fifth dimensional stuff. I believe that we are divine creatures and we're here on a human experience. And when we truly get that in our grasp, life is not so bad. We discuss and we're quite philosophical about some of the things poets usually are. And me and my friend were coming up with all sorts of things that were difficulties and all that, and we realised, life's a piece of shit. What? Everybody stands back and says, what do you mean by that? And it's a different perspective. a different perspective. If we go through life thinking that life's always going to be wonderful, which is what we are taught, well, we're always disappointed. And disappointment causes our frequencies and our vibrations to be low. And as we go into a new era of high vibrational people with love and such, when we have to keep our vibrations high. So instead of disappointment, everything's a bonus. Everything's a bonus. And if we truly understand that we are one and we are divine creatures that's come here to have a human experience, well then, as collective, part of the human collective, we're all part of the human collective, we all have to stand responsible for some of the stuff in the past. But what we come into is a world that is damaged, it's hurt, the mother has been raped completely for everything that she gives us, and we come into a piece of shit. But now, because we are going forward into the future, everything we do is a new way of doing things. And we have to walk in a way of love. And we've got to walk in a way of change. And we've got to walk in a way that we're not doing the damage that we've done in the past. It's time to move forward. We've seen the things of the past, and there's many, many hurts. But we have to move forward as a new people, as a total new way. I believe the Westminster system that we live in this country is over and should be demolished because it's out of date. I believe in sovereign leadership of this country. I believe there is tribal leaders and kings that gives us the ability to have sovereign ownership of this land and who we are, and being sovereign who we are. And that's who I stand, and that's who I believe that we are, and we're moving forward. I always thank you, James, for allowing me to get up here and have a bit of a rap, because, rapping's always good, I'm into poetry for some strange reason, over the years I've done many things, but coming into poetry over the last 50 years, I think, of my life has been an interesting conclusion. I'd just like to do this new paradigm thing, because we're all trying this. Isn't it exciting to live in this time and watching the world's situation as the mystery unwinds? We stand on the premise of understanding as a last-ditch effort, as the old school make their attempt to hold on into their physical science and the way that it's been. When change is apparent, we know how now of energy and the vibration of life and the community and caring and not competing and warring and corruption and strife. So if we look forward to the heaven on earth, one with all beings as above and within, don't focus on the distraction. It will steal your love and your joy. Our thoughts are so powerful. We've been asking for change. So keep your eyes on the beauty of nature and the beauty of life. Let them fight, let them battle, and let the universe have them. It's not up to us. Our place is living in unconditional love. And stand for freedom and keep your vibration high. Amazing, the words that's been given by the Spirit to the poets at the moment. Because, I've said it in the past, if people had listened to poets instead of politicians, we might be doing okay around the place. There's that much poetry to be said, and it's always good, to find it. This is a times of changing. Times are really changing from the way it was before. The lessons that we've learned are still learning right now. We are challenged every moment to break the patterns of the past. Don't be bound by fear and anguish of the hurts and the memories. They were helpful to build the character you are today. So stand now in the moment and be the best you can. we have the opportunity to build a brand new world the way that we would like it if we take a different way. So listen to your higher self. In each and every one, have compassion for all people. Show love for no reason. The divine lives in your heart, and heaven is what we make it, not in some place above. So it is time to give your mind a rest and listen to your heart and live in high vibration and unconditional love. Thank you very much. That was with Steve Wordsmith, Michael, where the rubber hits the road in this game they call life. It's available here at the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame, and being the nominated living legend for this 2001 James, you know, it's always James, my brother from another mother.
I hope they're not getting too close.
No, I have
each other diseases or something.
I have to challenge some people, you know, because they have falsities about me and James, but we are just brothers from other mothers, and we are great mates, and we both heteros, so good on you.
Now, I met Steve, oh goodness me, it must have been 2016, 17, something like that. And I've been travelling in my bus. And one of the things about Steve was he was like the Australian representative at the World Expo 88 in what's now called South Bank in Meanjin, Brisbane. And I also lived in South Brisbane, South Meanjin, for a good 11 years before the roof blew off in a thunderstorm. So you can kind of attribute that to the name Thundercloud. Yes. But yeah, there's more to the story than that. While I was living there, I was teaching and English as a second language, migrants, refugees, so a little bit of the background of this particular piece that I've written. Through the 2012, 2013, when they had the G20 protests there, and a few other things happening. And as an English as a second language teacher, I met all these people from all around the world that didn't speak English, so they were coming to this place for safety. And there were all kinds of backgrounds, from migrants, business migrants, and their business partners, wives, husbands, refugees that came on boats, and ones that came on planes illegally and burnt their passports, ones that come out of refugee camps everywhere. And I just never got, why in the heck is there any borders? But I do now, because it goes back to the Enclosure Act of common law and the Magna Carta, and saying, okay, we stick a fence here, and then someone can claim ownership of this bit. This is mine, get out. There's a fence there, didn't you see it? And that's pretty much what happened up here, well, throughout Australia and on these highlands. There's this massive ecocide by putting in a fence, and then of course the kangaroos couldn't get there, and there was nothing for the First Nations people to eat, so they would just go and take a sheep or whatever, and therein is this trauma itself. And where's our food gone? We'll take that, but no, you can't take that one, we're going to shoot you. But it also reminds me of the story of Ireland, because before the British colonised Ireland, British law, L-O-R-E, was held by in something called Brehon law, B-R-E-H-O-N, if you want to look it up, Brehon law, and it was held by poets. They spent years learning over and over and over and over these quatrains and poems in old Irish Gaelic or whatever the language was over there at the time. And there was no punitive justice. No punishment, no jails. It was purely restorative justice. So if you did someone wrong and they would call in the law people, and they would recite these verses, and then from that decision would be made. You would have to, work for this family for so many years or whatever, and repay that wronging that you did. They didn't have fences. So in order to colonise Ireland, the English had already, as part of pre-Magna Carta, introduced the Enclosures Act. And it's the Enclosures Act, that particular piece of legislation that causes the systemic violence that has led to saying this is people coming in, taking away land and saying this is mine, and then we'll put up a fence, a border. So this short one is titled Defence. Defence, yeah. This is defence. Keeping the doggy in. Stopping the refugees running from sin. This is defence. Imaginary line. In the sand is a border. This land is mine. Without defence, the dogs could be free. Without the border, we could help the refugees. Which now leads me into something that I wrote on the 25th of January 2017. But it was about a situation while I was living there in South Brisbane, South Mianjin. I would go on these runs, keeping fit. And this Friday afternoon, it's South Bank. Now, South Bank is this beautiful parkland that was built on where, like, the river bank, and it covers the whole river in concrete with a great big huge fake swimming pool and fountains and stuff and barbecues, and it's really beautiful and it's a lovely place to spend some time. In order to create it, after World Expo 88, they created this statutory authority, a corporation called South Bank Corporation. So I go for a run this Friday afternoon, and there's this big grassy patch down by the river where you could actually get down to the river, and there's this dolphin out there. And anyway, the long story short, I'll do the poem, and you'll get the gist of it. The noise here in the city is so very loud. You can't hear the frogs or birds singing, and you can't hear the thundercloud. I went looking for a branch of a eucalyptus tree. Eventually I saw one out of reach for me. I went running one afternoon down to the fake South Bank and saw a dolphin in the water, and this is where my heart sank. For floating in the river was plastic everywhere. So I stripped down to my undies and I dived right in right there. I grabbed that plastic junk food pack, waved to the dolphin and swam right back. Well, the insecurity guard stood there. And a trooper, too, with short cropped hair. There's sharks in there, they said to me. It's dangerous to swim freely. I asked the crowd what they saw. A dolphin was what they all roared. You saw me, I swim free, a good swimmer is what I be. I asked the cop, is there a law preventing me swimming from shore? He answered, no, but insecurity said, corporate bylaws prevent thee. The corporation makes the law 8 metres out from the shore. The Crown, it gave us all the powers. The water, tide, and the land is ours. And if you don't like it, you can go. This place is fake. a tourist show. In South Bank, homeless don't exist. But tourists can all get pissed. There's no eucalyptus tree, just a plastic beach to swim freely. The rocks and mud flats are covered now. The docks and old homes all pulled down. The frogs don't like the chlorine water. Pythons can't live where they oughta. Crows and ibis live there now, eating garbage from the ground. The river cries, the birds sing loud, the freeway drowns the noises out. The distant thundercloud roars. Summer, lightning, thunder, rain pours. Wash away that concrete pain. Grow eucalyptus and frogs again. It was an interesting experience. It was quite surreal. It was me, coming out in my undies because I was out of the river, and here's a copper, and here's pulling my running clothes back on. And with that, these things here. Gladys Wilson's Australia poem is available from the Australia Poetry Hall of Fame. Steve Wordsmith, Where the Rubber Hits the Road, in this game they call Life. His book is also available here. And Poetry to End Prohibition, that's one of mine. And you can also get that poem, those last two, Defence and 25th of January, Who Owns the Running Water? And that's what really got me about the whole situation. There's an imaginary line 8 metres out. I can swim over there 8 metres out from the shore, but not in that 8 metres. And here goes the tide flowing underneath this imaginary line. And generally, like in Australia, something like 2 or 6 metres or 10 metres from the riverbank is a free passageway, isn't it? Something like that.
It's supposed to have 30 feet from the river is a home.
It's free passageway, yeah. But they're available in Lust in Nimbin, which is the second of my books. There's Love in Nimbin, Lust in Nimbin, but they're available on Amazon and online. You can get them.
Have you written Lost in Nimbin yet?
Lost in Nimbin. That's how I got there.
You've got to do a trilogy.
Lost in Nimbin. Yeah. Everybody's looking for themselves in Nimbin. Yeah. Everybody is lost in Nimbin.
Unhappy place.
Even those that live in Nimbin think they're found, but they're lost. Everybody is lost in Nimbin. The only people that are not lost in Nimbin are the descendants of the Widjabul, Wyabul, the Bundjalung people, because that's their home. But everyone else is sort of like grabbing a vortex and they go like a big funnel.
Is that Uncle Sess down there, isn't it?
Yes, so big shout out to Uncle Sess Roberts and all those people.
I love the fact that you mentioned Lewis, Uncle Lewis, and he gave me a word called liminality, and that's
liminality.
Liminality is a fabulous word.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. Lust in Nimbin. Yeah. It's in pink. See. Yeah. And big shout out to Nimbin out there. Big shout out to all the people around Australia.
And around the world.
The First Nations and the people around the world. We got people that know Doug in Montana listening and watching to us on YouTube and Facebook and stuff. Yeah. And in England and other places. Ireland
too, yeah.
All the way from Guyra.
Yeah. France, in Paris, I've got someone watches me from Paris.
Yeah. All right. On that, I'm just going to
Berlin. They watch it.
Finish tonight with a little one that I wrote about walking on the grass, just going through that paddock over there. It's a little one. Walking on grass. Feather from a galah. Gourmet mushrooms grow. Patches of snow-like clover. Dandelion gold pokes its head up. Sounds of flies, magpies, plover, and many more galahs. The sun emerges, the breeze blows, and butterflies. And with that, I'll finish off. tonight. Thank you everyone for coming here to the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame. Thank you to the people in the virtual world out there, in the metaverse. Yeah.
The multiverse.
And don't forget to subscribe and like and give it a thumbs up, and you can catch us every week here and share it too. Click the share button. Do that now before you go. Okay, go. Give it a thumbs up. See you later.
We'll